Beloved friend, before you scroll, pause right here. This moment is not random, and you are not listening to these words by accident. Something within you is already awake enough to recognize that what you survived was not meaningless. This message didn't find you because you were searching for it. It found you because you are finally ready to understand what was happening while you were enduring what felt impossible to explain. There are seasons in life that don't announce themselves as turning points. They arrive quietly, disguised as exhaustion, confusion, and waiting. And yet, those are often the very seasons where the deepest work is done. The stretch you've been living in, the one that demanded more patience than you thought you had, but more faith than you felt capable of, and more endurance than seemed fair, has reached its end. Even if your emotions haven't caught up yet, even if your circumstances haven't fully shifted on the outside, something has already changed within you. You are not the same person who entered that season. You carry more discernment now, more emotional depth, more spiritual awareness, and whether you noticed it or not, strength was forming in places that once felt fragile. So often we expect change to arrive loudly. We wait for obvious signs, dramatic breakthroughs, or visible confirmation that God is moving. We think transformation should look like instant relief or immediate reward. But heaven rarely works on our timeline or according to our expectations. The most powerful transformations usually happen in silence. They happen when no one is clapping, when nothing looks different yet, when the only evidence of change is the quiet resilience growing inside you. You were not forgotten in that silence. You were not overlooked. You were not delayed or punished. You were becoming. While life continued to rush forward around you, something sacred was taking place beneath the surface. The pressure you felt was not there to break you. It was there to shape you. Scripture reminds us that God makes everything beautiful in its time, not our time, not when we demand it, but when the work within us is complete. And that timing, though it felt slow and confusing, was intentional. There is a reason you had to walk through moments where clarity was missing. There is a reason the answers didn't come all at once. If everything had been explained too early, you wouldn't have grown into the person capable of carrying what is coming next. Faith matures in uncertainty. Trust deepens in the absence of immediate reassurance. And wisdom is formed when we learn how to stand without constant confirmation. Think about how often you prayed for strength, only to be met with resistance instead of relief. How many times you asked for peace, yet found yourself navigating inner battles you never expected. Or how you prayed for abundance, but instead entered seasons that felt dry, stretched, and empty. That was not heaven ignoring you. That was heaven teaching you, because real strength isn't given fully formed. It is discovered when you are required to rise. Real peace isn't found when everything is calm. It's built when you learn how to remain grounded while life shakes around you. You didn't just survive those moments, you learned. You adapted, you grew. You learned how to sit with yourself without running away. You learned how to hear God's voice even when it felt faint. You learned how to let go of what no longer aligned with who you were becoming. And that kind of growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in quiet endurance. There were days you wondered if you were falling behind. Days when you looked at others and questioned why their lives seemed to move forward while yours felt paused. But what you couldn't see then was that your season was never about speed. It was about depth. While others were moving quickly, you were being rooted deeply, and roots are always formed in darkness before anything visible appears above the surface. God was not withholding anything from you. He was protecting what He was preparing to give you. Because not every blessing can be rushed. Some require maturity. Some require discernment. Some require the ability to hold joy without fear and progress without pride. And those qualities are forged slowly, patiently, intentionally. Even the moments that felt like delay were working in your favor. The unanswered prayers, the closed doors, the sudden endings, and the prolonged waiting were all part of a greater alignment you couldn't yet see. You were being taught how to trust without control, how to remain faithful without guarantees, and how to stay present even when the outcome was unclear. Those lessons don't fade. They become part of who you are. If you listen closely now, you may notice something subtle but powerful. Your reactions have changed. Your tolerance for what drains you has decreased. Your awareness has sharpened. You no longer chase what once distracted you. That's not accidental. That's evidence. Evidence that the season did its work. Evidence that something within you has shifted from surviving to becoming. You may not have realized it while you were inside it, but you were being shaped for what comes next. The patience you developed, the boundaries you learned to set, the faith you practiced in silence, and the courage it took to keep going when quitting felt easier, all of it mattered. None of it was wasted. And now, as you stand at the edge of what feels like transition, understand this clearly. You didn't miss your moment. You weren't late. You weren't overlooked. You were being prepared in ways that couldn't have happened any other way. The quiet work is complete, and what follows will reflect not just what you asked for, but who you've become while waiting. There is something powerful you need to understand about what you walked through. It was never random, and it was never wasted. The weight you carried, the pressure that seemed to increase instead of lift, and the moments when you felt squeezed from every direction were all part of a refining process. Not to weaken you, but to reveal what was already placed inside you. Scripture tells us that God refines His people in the furnace of affliction, not to destroy them, but to purify them. And whether you realized it or not, that furnace changed you. You were tested in ways that couldn't be explained to others. This wasn't a test with clear instructions or a visible finish line. It showed up in ordinary days, in repeated disappointments, in silence where answers should have been. It lived in moments when you did the right thing and still felt unseen. And that's what made it real. Because the most meaningful tests are not public, they are private. They measure who you are when no one is applauding, and when obedience costs more than rebellion. There were times you felt stretched so thin you wondered how much more you could give. Yet somehow, you kept showing up. You kept choosing integrity when compromise would have been easier. You kept choosing faith when walking away seemed justified. That wasn't accidental. That was evidence of growth. Evidence that something deeper than emotion was guiding you. You weren't being driven by comfort anymore. You were being shaped by conviction. You may not have recognized the test while you were inside it. You probably expected something clearer, something more dramatic, but instead it arrived disguised as everyday endurance. It looked like staying when leaving would have hurt less. It looked like letting go of relationships that no longer felt safe for your soul. It looked like trusting God in silence when prayer felt unanswered. Those moments were not small. Heaven was watching closely. The pressure you felt wasn't meant to crush you. Pressure reveals structure. It exposes weak points so they can be strengthened. And what you learned under that pressure will stay with you far longer than temporary relief ever could. You learned how to stand without constant reassurance. You learned how to listen inwardly instead of reacting outwardly. You learned discernment, the ability to recognize when something was no longer aligned with who you were becoming. There were moments when comparison crept in quietly, when you looked at others and wondered why their lives seemed to move forward while yours felt paused. Those moments tested your heart more than you realize, because it takes maturity to stay faithful when progress looks uneven. It takes trust to believe that God's timeline is not a reflection of your worth, and you passed that test by staying rooted instead of resentful. Walking away from certain environments was one of the hardest parts. Leaving what once felt familiar, even if it was unhealthy, requires courage. Staying would have been easier. Blending in would have been simpler. But you chose what protected your spirit instead of what fed your comfort. That decision alone marked a turning point, because God often moves us forward by teaching us what to release, not what to chase. You may have felt misunderstood during this season. when others reduced your journey to simple explanations that didn't reflect the depth of what you were carrying. That isolation wasn't meant to punish you. It created space for clarity, space for intimacy with God, space to hear your own voice again. The loneliness you endured became the soil where your spiritual roots grew deeper than ever before. And still you stayed faithful. Not perfectly, not without doubt, but faithfully. You questioned, you cried, you wrestled internally, and yet you did not turn your back on God. You kept whispering prayers even when you felt empty. You kept choosing hope even when disappointment tried to harden your heart. That kind of faith isn't loud. It's resilient, and heaven honors it. There were nights when sleep escaped you, when your mind replayed mistakes and unanswered prayers on repeat. Nights when fear spoke louder than faith. But even then, you didn't give up. You kept moving forward one step at a time, even when the path felt unsteady. That perseverance mattered more than you know, because endurance builds trust, and trust builds capacity. This season wasn't about proving yourself to others. It wasn't about earning approval or meeting expectations. It was about becoming the kind of person who could carry what God has planned without losing themselves in the process. You were being shaped into a vessel that could hold responsibility, blessing, and purpose without spilling it through pride, fear, or comparison. And now, as you look back, you may start to see it. The way your boundaries are stronger. The way your faith is quieter but deeper. The way your reactions are more measured. Those are not accidents. Those are marks of refinement. You were tested, yes, but you were also trusted. Trusted enough to walk through fire and come out with your integrity intact. The fact that you're still here, still listening, still open, is your confirmation. You didn't fail. You didn't fall short. You endured. And endurance changes everything. Something has shifted, even if it hasn't fully revealed itself yet. You are standing at the edge of a new chapter, not because everything suddenly became easy, but because you are no longer the same person who entered the storm. What comes next is not built on striving or proving. It is built on alignment. Alignment with who you've become and with what God has been preparing behind the scenes while you thought nothing was happening. What you prayed for is closer than you realize, not in a rushed or chaotic way, but in a quiet, intentional unfolding. The blessing you are stepping into will not arrive wrapped in noise or urgency. It will come with a sense of rightness, a deep inner knowing that this fits. It will meet you where you are now, not where you were when you first asked for it. That is how you know the process worked. You may still feel traces of doubt, moments where fear whispers that you're not ready or that something could go wrong. But readiness has never meant the absence of fear. Readiness means you've learned how to move forward without letting fear lead. You've learned how to trust even when the outcome isn't fully visible. And that trust is exactly what allows the next door to open. Don't be surprised when things begin to align in unexpected ways. Conversations that matter, invitations that feel out of reach, opportunities that seem to find you rather than the other way around. This isn't coincidence. This is the result of endurance. You stayed faithful when no one was watching. You remained grounded when comparison tried to pull you off course. And now the timing is shifting. You might notice that the life unfolding ahead of you doesn't look like what you once imagined. That's not loss. That's refinement. What God brings into your life now will match your capacity, your values, and your depth. It won't require you to abandon yourself to maintain it. It won't cost you your peace. That is one of the clearest signs that you are stepping into something ordained, not forced. There will be moments when your mind tries to pull you backward, replaying old doubts or reminding you of past disappointments. That's natural, but those memories no longer define you. They served their purpose. They shaped your discernment. They taught you what you need to know. Now they become wisdom, not weight. You didn't endure everything just to return to the same patterns. You didn't learn how to stand alone only to shrink yourself again. This season ahead is asking you to stand tall without arrogance, confident without striving, and open without fear. The humility you developed will protect you. The strength you built will sustain you. You may begin to see visible confirmation of what was once only felt internally. Progress that feels steady instead of rushed. Relationships that are mutual instead of draining. Peace that doesn't disappear when circumstances shift. These are not small things. These are signs that you are walking in alignment rather than resistance. Others may start to notice the change in you before you fully do. They may comment on your calm, your clarity, your presence. Some may be inspired, others may be confused. Not everyone will understand the journey that brought you here, and they don't need to. This chapter is not about proving anyone wrong. It's about honoring what God has been building within you all along. Remember this: as things begin to move, the blessing is not the reward. The blessing is the responsibility God now trusts you with. Responsibility to steward peace. Responsibility to carry purpose without ego. Responsibility to remain grounded even when favor increases. You were prepared for this, not quickly but thoroughly. There may be moments where the pace feels faster than you expected, when doors open in succession and you wonder if you can keep up. In those moments, return to what carried you through the waiting: stillness, prayer, discernment. The same practices that sustained you in the valley will keep you steady on higher ground. You are not stepping into this chapter alone. God has already gone ahead of you. He has placed support where you'll need it, protection where you're vulnerable, and wisdom where decisions will matter. You don't have to force anything. What is meant for you will recognize you. As the story unfolds, allow yourself to receive without guilt. You don't have to downplay your growth or minimize what you survived. It mattered. It shaped you. And it qualifies you not because you earned it, but because you were faithful through it. Stand confidently in this moment. You didn't miss your timing. You didn't misunderstand the process. You didn't wait in vain. The season that once felt painfully slow was laying a foundation strong enough to support what comes next. Your name has already been spoken in places you haven't stepped into yet. The path ahead is not uncertain, even if it feels unfamiliar. Trust the unfolding, trust the preparation, and trust that what is arriving now is not just an answer to your prayers, but a reflection of who you have become while waiting.